So there's this concept of the singularity, this artificial superintelligence that's going to be this melding of man's brain and women's brains and computers' brains all together to create this massive superintelligence. I believe that the singularity will happen through food. It'll happen through food because food touches all of our lives in every aspect: culture, health, environment. At IC Foods at UC Davis, our mission is to build the Internet of Food, to design, build, and assemble and develop the language infrastructure, the ontological infrastructure for this new massive undertaking that promises to be larger than either the Internet of Things or even the World Wide Web. Same way that HTML drives the World Wide Web and every web browser understands HyperText Markup language. Well, what would it look like if we had a HyperFood markup language and we could mark up food in all of its glory as it comes out of the ground, as it goes through the processing machines, as you experience it in your kitchen, as you eat it, you slice it, you dice it, you chop it, you can it. And we can annotate that and look through the history of food as it comes to our table. We're in this world now where we have sensors everywhere, have sensors on the water, in the land, on the sea. We can keep track of all kinds of things. And that means we have this window of opportunity to monitor not just our actions and the environment, but how we respond to the environment and the consequences of those actions. And you can see here, this is a visualization of the food on ontology that we can look at annotate data for the dietary labels, food product types, food treatment processes, preservation processes, the part of the animal, the way we treated the food, that we cooked it, the source where it came from, the geographic location, the contact surface that it came in touch with in case we're doing food safety. And we can even drill into things like food product type. We can see that we've got all these different ways of categorizing food product types, and we can even look inside of like food additives. And like here, we can highlight and we can just filter out just this section of the ontology. We can break the phenotype of a food down into each of its components, the physical properties and the physical structures, the chemical components and properties, all the atoms and the chemicals and the way they're linked together, as well as the biological components and properties, whether it's a part of a plant or part of an animal, or a milk fat globule membrane that might have some kind of bioactive properties when you consume it. And these three things together, uniquely combined, will give rise to what we call organoleptic properties. These are the aroma and the sound and the taste and the touch. And you might think, sound, well, I don't care what my food sounds like, but actually it's really, really important. If you bite into an apple, no matter how apple-y, wonderful, sweet that apple is, if it doesn't crunch like you expect it to, you're probably just gonna wanna chuck that apple onto the ground, because it's a sign that that apple's probably not good. So these are all very important aspects of food phenotype. And we can measure physical properties, things that maybe a lot of people don't think about, but how thick is that ketchup or that sauce or that custard? These are what we call the rheological properties, the viscoelastic properties. These are actually properties that are really important to dough and something that we measure. We're standing here in the UC Davis food processing pilot plant looking at a dough sheeting machine that is sheetotyping dough. The essence of sheetotyping dough is that we've got control over the entire process of sheeting, control of the speed of these belts, we have these lasers that are shooting down and able to measure the precise height of this dough pad as it passes through the rollers. And each time it passes between the rollers, we have a precise measurement of exactly the width there. You see it being adjusted now, and the speed of the rollers, the speed of the belts. We know exactly how much force is being used, and so we get a precise force over area curve, essentially how the dough will respond if we're making bread, how the dough will respond if we're making pasta, how the dough will respond if we're making pastry. So now we have a method not just for breeders who want to breed to make more wheat, or to make their wheat more drought resistant, or to make their wheat more pest resistant, but also to make the food taste better.
Traditions of wheat and recipes around wheat have existed since 10,000 BC. In losing varieties that can no longer sustain due to climate change, we need to be able to capture information about wheat properties.
So when we figure out how dough works, how dough makes things delicious, and we understand the properties that come from the flour that make the dough what it is, and the properties that come from the wheat that make the flour what it is, and then ultimately this wheat is growing in the environment. So when we can figure out how to annotate wheat for the genetics and the phenotype of wheat and how it responds to drought and pest tolerance, all the way up to how to make it delicious, then we can make better decisions about how to make our tasty food that is also compatible with a good environment and good health. One of the most critical aspects of food is flavor. When we think about, oh, well, you know, flavor is not as important as nutrition, or it's not as important as the environment, well, that's true, except when it comes time to buy that food, most people are making those purchases based on flavor.
Humans, we have a very complicated but essential relationship with flavor. We eat food because we need food to survive. But food fulfills another more important function of pleasure or relaxation in our lives. And understanding this second function of pleasure, it's important to understand what flavor really means. Flavor isn't the same to every person on the planet, and it varies with the kind of food you eat. It varies with the context you're in.
Flavor is a wicked problem. The idea that what I taste as zesty or as tomato or as sour will be the same thing that you describe as zesty or tomato as sour. They may not be the same. In the same way that I may look at a plant and think that that is yellow or that is a green. If we look at color to talk about the wavelengths of light and the shades of gray and the amount of hue and the tint, the language around flavor is much less precise. And so her goal with her PhD dissertation is to tighten up that language and to talk about what does it look like to compute over flavor.
So I really tried to take all my empirical knowledge and turn it into a mathematical formula. The organs, your mouth, your nose, your eyes, the way you sense it is then converts into your perception. And perception is what you finally express, the words you use to describe the joy or the pleasure you felt when you were eating that, or the lack of it. That's how chefs, that's how people have cooked intuitively. This is how our ancestors have always cooked intuitively, but they're not able to always express in a logical or rational way every micro step of going from a raw ingredient to a finished product. But we stand to lose this knowledge if we don't articulate it in these precise ontologies.
When we think about all the critical infrastructure that we could be building as human beings, what's more important than food? What's more important that we could come together and build more important than food? We have to get it right. There's no planet B, right? There's no second option. We have one planet, we're all here together, and we have an infrastructure that we need to build. The only way that we're going to be able to do that is if we start speaking in a common language to annotate all of this data that's emerging from all these sensors.